Greetings. My name is Nihal Krishan. I'm a junior at ASU studying political science and broadcast journalism. We are currently filming from the Cronkite School at ASU's downtown campus. With me today, I have, on my left, Michael Martinez, National Chair of the Young Democrats of America College Caucus and a political science major at ASU. On my right is Carlos Alfaro, ASU Republicans president and an economics and history major at ASU. The topic of today's debate is minimum wage. As you know, Congress is trying to pass a bill to raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10. Republicans emphasize that they found that this minimum wage would, over the next 2 years, cost the economy over 500,000 jobs. Democrats, on the other hand, highlight part of a CBO Congressional Budget Office report that says that increasing the pay rate would help lift over 900,000 Americans out of poverty. 2% of Americans currently get paid by the minimum wage, and over 50% of them are between the ages of 16 and 24. So a lot of young people and people in college like us at ASU. My first question for the debate is, why do we have a minimum wage in the first place, and is it currently accomplishing its purpose, according to you? We'll start with you, Carlos.
Thank you, and I definitely don't think that it's accomplishing its intended goal. The minimum wage law can be seen as, it says that it is illegal and therefore criminal for anyone to hire anybody else for less than a certain amount of dollars per hour. The minimum wage law does not provide more jobs, it actually outlaws a lot of jobs. So the outlawing of jobs inevitably results in unemployment, less jobs to go around. The people that are mostly affected by this are going to be low-skilled, young, and immigrants and minority workers. So, in fact, you quoted the CBO report that said that 500,000 jobs were going to be lost. And this report was actually criticized by Nancy Pelosi, the congressional Democrats, and even the White House for claiming such thing. But as we know, unemployment rate and the minimum wage rate are closely related, and it's easy to see why raising the minimum wage creates unemployment. If we were to raise it to $20, $30, if it's such a good idea, and raise it to $50 an hour, what you can see is that there would be less jobs and fewer people actually making that amount of money. We can't think that just by creating a government rule we're going to fix society's problems. Thank you.
So my next question, is related to that. If we accept the fact, Michael, that let's say if the minimum wage goes up to $60 or $100, that would reduce unemployment, then we're accepting the premise that minimum wage is tied to employment in some relationship or some way, shape, or form. The only way to escape from this is to believe that there's not a relationship or discontinuity between minimum wage and employment. So, what do you have to say about this? How do we move forward given that there is this relationship?
So, I completely agree. Of course, there's a connection between minimum wage and employment. We're talking about employee salary, employee pay. What I don't agree with is this argument that is being used in this question and by Carlos. It's basically an extreme argument. It's almost like a slippery slope. If we're going to do $10 an hour, what stops us from doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 100? I think I heard a newscaster say $1 million bajillion. What stops us from doing that? I mean, common sense, first off. That's what stops us from doing that. Now, when we originally implemented the minimum wage, it was to do so to make sure that employers weren't taking advantage of employees. It wasn't to outlaw jobs or stop jobs from happening. It was to make sure that employees were not taken advantage of. That happened in 1938. It's been around for nearly 80 years. And right now, what we're looking at is that we're not talking about a $60 minimum wage. We're talking about, Congress is talking about a $10.10 minimum wage. Right now, the federal poverty line for a family of two is $15,080 a year. That's barely enough to live off. My mom was a single mother, family of three, me, my mom, my sister. The federal poverty line for a family of three is $19,790. On minimum wage right now, like I said, you can only make just over $15,000. That means you're $4,000 under the federal poverty level if you're a single mother with children. We can't just ignore this anymore. We have to do something about it. Raising the minimum wage, if not to $10.10, to at least $9.30, which would account for inflation at the 1981 standard, $9.30 an hour. I think is a good median.
Okay, so then as whether it's $9.30 or $10.10. Where exactly should we draw the line? Because the Wall Street Journal just released a report that said 40% of companies that do pay their employees by the minimum wage will see employment be dropped or cut if the minimum wage is raised to $10.10. So aside from forgetting about numbers like $20 or $30 or $100, even at $10.10, it seems like employment will drop. So what do we do about this when how do we balance employment being cut even at this low rate with the fact that people are not being able to earn enough money to provide themselves a living wage?
Yeah, and I think that last term is the key term there, living wage. What we should be looking at is how much does it cost to not live in poverty and to live a life that you have food every day, you have somewhere to live, you can get to and from work. That's what we should be looking at. Like I said, right now, for a family of 3, it's $19,790. That's a federal poverty line, and we're not getting anywhere near that. Even if we raised it to, let's say, $10.10 an hour, that's going to give you a little over $21,000. So, I mean, finding that balance is definitely hard. But what people need to realize is when we're talking about job loss, as unfortunate as it may seem, no one wants to see job loss. I don't think it'd be 500,000 jobs, but there may be some job loss on the short term. On the short term, there may be job loss. But if we raise the minimum wage for over 21 million Americans, what's going to happen is they're not going to save that money. They're on the poverty line. They're not going to save that money. They're going to put that money right back into the economy. They're going to be buying groceries. They're going to be buying products. And what happens is companies, local businesses, small businesses, large businesses, they're all going to see increase of products being bought, of services being bought. And in the long term, that's going to end up in them hiring more people. And then it's just a loop. We start putting even more money back into the economy.
So a recent NBC News and Wall Street Journal poll showed that nearly 2/3 of Americans surveyed support boosting the minimum wage and do think it'll have positive impacts, like Michael says. How do you contrast this with, Carlos, how do you contrast what people want, public opinion, with the actual minimum wage increase and its effects, positive or negative?
Well, I think that it's not surprising to see that most people want people out of poverty. We do realize that there is a big problem when people can't feed their families, when children go to sleep hungry. And the problem comes when we only see one solution, when we see the government to have the answer to this. And we've been trying to solve poverty since 1964, actually, when we declared the war on poverty. And the poverty rate was at 19%. After these decades and billions of dollars that we spent on all these programs, it has never gone down from 15. And so what that means is that no matter how much government you want to inject, no matter how much money and laws and decrees you want to pass, government is not the solution, and we cannot ignore the unintended consequences because they actually have a real hurt on real people. For example, the youth. Teen unemployment is at 20.7%. That is more than 3 times higher than the national average. This is no coincidence. The fact that people coming out as teens and trying to get into the job market with low skills, with no connections, with really no experience, they're gonna have to come up to the competition when there's somebody there that has the experience, and they're not gonna get the job. The minimum wage forces employers to discriminate. They must discriminate against low-skilled workers because it makes it illegal for them to hire somebody else that is lower skilled at a lower price. This affects minorities and immigrants just like myself. It's actually this is a very personal problem for me because here's a man that comes from a different country, is trying to feed their family, trying to make his American dream without a government handout, and yet you're taking away his opportunity to gain the experience necessary, even if it's just for a little bit less than $7 even. You're taking away his opportunity to gain the experience and get a better job in the future and sacrifice that for now getting more money to these people. So I would ask Michael and the people that are advocate for these types of policies, what would they say if they stared one of these people that are going to lose their jobs, one of these 500,000 people, face them face to face and tell them why their needs are being sacrificed for the benefit of a higher wage of the people who get to be employed. I don't think it's fair at all, and we're trying to accomplish something else with that.
So I have to address that. So what you're saying is that we'll see a lot of low-skilled workers lose their job. Well, I don't think that's true. I think if we look at it, most of those low-skilled workers, people that are making minimum wage, or people that are working at convenience stores, fast food restaurants, they're cashiers at grocery stores. These are all places that will not only maintain their level of service if we increase the minimum wage, because people are still going to go to McDonald's, they're still going to buy groceries, they're still going to go to the Circle K, but they may actually see an increase in need for people, because there's going to be even more people spending money there.
Yeah, but I would like to combat that and say that the last time we raised unemployment or minimum wage was the unemployment rate of teens jumped from 15% to 25%. Last time we raised it. We're trying to look for equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. It doesn't matter that the people who are just entering the job market are making less than those that have the skills to earn a higher wage. What we're fighting for is not to destroy jobs at the beginning of the process, where yes, you are getting paid a lower wage, but that helps you build a future and a career so that you can make more in the future. So I don't want to destroy that just so some people can have more money.
So would you be opposed to a tiered system, where under the age of 18 you could still make under the federal minimum wage? Let's say if it's 10.10, then if you're under the age of 18, you can make $8.50 an hour?
Yes, because it is not a market set system. Most wages today are set by the market, where you go to your employer and you say, this is a fair wage for what I'm providing. Your skills decide that. Your employer decides that it's fair, and it's a market product. When you try to do this for the lower workers, for the lower skilled workers, you're using government as a judge of saying these are going to be the people that have to earn this much. You're looking for equality in outcome rather than equality in opportunity. And America is all about opportunity and what you can do by yourself, not what government can grant you.
Okay, so we're going to move on. Those in favor of minimum wage often like to emphasize the human element of raising minimum wage, so that your average lower class individual can earn enough in a day to support himself or herself and their family, which is obviously desirable. Many economists and studies show, however, that it is the poor and it is these disadvantaged members of society who are ultimately going to be hurt most by this change of law. What do you have to say about this? How do we try to remain humane and sensitive to real people and their real needs when creating macro policies like minimum wage rates?
Well, I would say that this is exactly the problem. Just like I outlined at the beginning, when government tries to do something to outlaw something like drugs, alcohol, poverty, they create these programs, they create these bureaus, and bureaucracy is created in order to tackle these issues. As we've seen in many other programs and many other issues in economics and civil life, when government creates a program, makes bureaucracy, and tries to eliminate a problem with a government decree, it's not the way that it usually goes. Usually we have unintended consequences. What we should be focusing on is how do people in the market actually gain higher wages? Remember that most people in the market today, their wage is set by the market and not by the law. Their wage is set by the skills that they have, by the experience that they've gathered, not by some government official telling them you should earn this much. So what I would say is more productivity and innovation equals higher wages. It equals higher wages and standards of living. Today we have gotten to the standard of living that we've gotten to because of our productivity and our workers, not because of some law saying that they have to make that much.
I just want to point out that the American workforce, especially even the lower skilled workforce, are more skilled, more productive than at any time in American history, and they're being paid less of a rate than they were in 1968, if you take inflation into account. So it's not that they're not skilled, it's not that they're not productive, it's that they're not being paid the rate that they should be paid. Now there is an aspect that the market does determine price, but not all the time. We do have a minimum wage. So there is a law stating that you are worth at least this much money based on just anything. You're worth $7.25 an hour. And that's even with, with inflation, they should be making at least $9.30 an hour. And we're talking about a human aspect. People forget it is about humans. It is about Americans. It's about our fellow people who are struggling to get by. I mentioned earlier that my mom was a single mother with 2 children working at Jack in the Box. She, at that time in the 80s, she was making a lot less money than she is now. And if it wasn't for HUD housing, we would probably be on the streets. And something you said earlier, at the war of poverty, it went from 19% down to 15%. It's easy to trivialize 4%, but if we look at the numbers, 4% right now would be over 12 million people. And to those 12 million people, it was a huge benefit. It's something that helped them maybe even change their lives around. So when we talk about the human aspect, I think it's actually one of the most important things that we don't forget, is that we're trying to help out our fellow Americans, and above all else, that should be our priority.
So I think both sides agree that our focus is to try to decrease poverty. But if a lot of these measures, like Republicans say, is actually going to be decreasing decreasing employment, then we're actually going to be hurting the poor and those who this minimum wage law is supposed to help. And if that is what a possible outcome, then how would you say we should battle this, or what alternatives do we have then to minimum wage, perhaps?
I don't know if we can. I mean, if we got rid of minimum wage right now, I think it would be chaos. People would be on the streets. I think it would be really bad. What we need to combat, education. That's a huge thing. We need to make college affordability an issue, not just for the youth. For anyone that wants to go back and learn new skills, it should be readily available to them. And sometimes it's just not, because it's just too expensive. We should also be looking at, we could keep minimum wage, but then offer tax incentives to larger companies to keep jobs here rather than sending them out to Costa Rica. I think Intel, I have a friend that just said Intel was closing one of their plants, and they're going down from like 130,000 people to 40,000 people and sending most of those jobs to Costa Rica. I mean, we need to be trying to intervene in these situations and saying, hey, we'll give you a tax credit if you stay here. I think that's positive. And we also need to remember that when we're talking about low-skilled jobs being lost, I don't buy that argument, specifically because the low-skilled jobs that would be lost, who's going to fill them other than low-skilled people? Even if the rate is up at 10-10, who's going to fill those jobs? It's still going to be the low-skilled people. They're just going to be making more money. And then they're putting more money into the system, which means not only do we have these specific jobs, more of these jobs open up, more fast food joints, more Circle K's, more grocery stores open up in neighborhoods, but then we see more of the middle class jobs open up, the management jobs start to open up, and then the high-end jobs still open up. We also need, it's not something that we can't do. I'm just saying, we're living in a time when the 1% of America has more money saved up than at any other time in our history. And it's not that we can't do it. It's whether or not the people controlling the money in this country want to give up some of their money. Right now, they don't. I don't understand why. In the 50s, when we had a 50% tax rate on millionaires, they were for it. It was about nationalism. It was about building our country, about helping other Americans move forward. Now, it seems like it's more about the money. How do we make more? If we outsource, if you fire people, if we don't provide the right type of health care, I mean, how do we save money? Well, we make more money for ourselves. That's what it seems like it's turned into, and we need to address that too.
I agree that this is a big problem, and I think that redistribution of that wealth is not going to be the way we create wealth. What creates wealth is production. And as we can see, in 2012, and to many people this could be shocking, but there was actually more people earning less than minimum wage than people earning minimum wage. Let me get this again. 1.5 million people were paid the minimum wage. That's about 1.1% of all American workers. 2 million earn less than that rate. The reason is because of the minimum wage exemptions. The way that people get these skills, the way that people get this experience is by going through the loophole of not going through the minimum wage law, becoming day laborers, becoming dog walkers, babysitters, all these jobs, interns, exactly. Where are the students going right after college? Are they going into well-paying jobs, or are they going into non-paying internships or very low-paid internships? That is the problem. We create these loopholes. We think that this law is going to fix it, but in fact, there's more people that are not being benefited by the law, even if it increased, than there is being benefited. I think we also see a disconnect between the value of people's income. We say, yeah, it doesn't matter that these people are going to lose their job, but more people will have money, and eventually it'll go back into the economy and they'll get jobs. We can't tell that to somebody, hey, lose your job, sacrifice your needs because the country needs you. That is something that is very communistic in nature. That's something that we should never accept. If we're going to lose jobs, if the CBO that is nonpartisan is telling us there's going to be jobs loss and there's Americans that are going to suffer, why would politicians want to continue with the same policy prescription?
Because Michael and Democrats argue that these job losses will be short-term, and if they are short-term and people will be returning to jobs, within a year, then it's worth taking short-term.
Not to mention that. I mean, but we have aspects, we have programs to help people who lose their jobs, obviously, and you know that's under fire sometimes with unemployment and SNAP benefits. But you know, no one's advocating for the loss of jobs. Like I said, the CBO has put out a lot of different different reports on this issue and many others. I'm sure there's some issues that they put out that you would disagree with completely. So you know, it's hard to look at it at face value. What we need to look at is, and also I don't think it's a redistribution of wealth. We're not taking money from the wealthy. We're not taking it out of their bank accounts and then giving it to other people.
But you just said tax
No,
them, right?
no, I'm not saying. I'm saying we should be looking at if we increase the minimum wage. That's not redistribution. That's saying we're going to make sure that everyone who works in this country has their needs met. Bottom line, if as a millionaire, you should be okay with that because your needs are more than met. It's not taking money out of that's already in your possession that you've earned. It's not taking money. It's just saying if you're going to hire people, make sure you pay them enough so that they can live their lives. That's it. That's not a redistribution. So I just got to get that out of the way because I've heard a lot of socialist and Marxist comments, not by you, but a lot of people over the last year over this minimum wage debate, and we got to take that off the table. It's not the same thing, and we should be. If we're talking about taxing the wealthy, the 1%, I don't think that it's something that should be taken off the table, especially if we see maybe another recession where jobs are lost again. Whether it has to do with the minimum wage or not, the wealthy should be taking a step towards helping the nation and helping other Americans get past that. And in this last recession, we didn't see that. So.
Okay, thank you. So my last question is for you, Carlos. So you know, if as you say, minimum wage doesn't work and actually causes unemployment and you know doesn't actually help us decrease our poverty rate, what do you think about taking it to the other extreme? Do you think minimum wage should be lowered or even abolished entirely in order to help fight competition overseas, lower costs, and give employers and employees more freedom and more liberty in the job market?
Definitely. I don't think there's been an instance in history where we've seen capitalism and largely free trade not work to get these people out of poverty.
What about specifically minimum wage and lower?
So what I'm saying, yeah, exactly. So minimum wage, I would abolish, and the reason is because it's an antiquated thought. It's a thought that we had a long time ago in saying, well, maybe if we force employers to pay more, maybe people will be okay. But we've understood that just simply passing a law does not actually fix our problems. What it does is it pushes people out of the job market. It makes people go through these loopholes and not getting paid minimum wage. So I think that the best thing that government can do right now is to completely overhaul their welfare stance, their welfare programs, and how we're attacking this problem. If we keep doing the same thing over and over and putting billions of dollars and decades of time into these programs that are completely bankrupt, of course, is referring to the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, our biggest debt and expenditures. And they're not working. We need to change. The market changes when things don't work. Programs are eliminated when they don't work in organizations, in private organizations. I think it should be the same in government, and they have no realization for this. Lobby groups and interest groups have taken over Washington to the point where we can't change our own programs to help the poor. It does exactly the opposite. It hurts us, and we need to stop it. We need to ask for a complete repeal of the minimum wage and a complete overhaul of the welfare system.
Well, I do agree that lobbyists have kind of taken over Washington. It's been a really big problem for us. I mean, the argument that we should get rid of the minimum wage is just, there's no other word to describe it to me but absurd, because we can't just take it away. It's just, if we take it away, then all of a sudden people are making 50 cents an hour, and how do they live? How do they live? And you know, social welfare programs, we need to, you're right, we need to look at ways to overhaul them. I would say that Social Security, we take the cap off, and someone that's making over $1 million shouldn't make
Let's focus on minimum wage
as $100,000 a year. But you know, we have a serious issue with poverty. Like you said, 15%, that's about 1 out of every 8 people are in poverty. We have to address this. Minimum wage is just, to me, is one step, and 71% of the nation, according to the Pew Research Center, says that they would agree with raising it to $9. You know, to me, $9 is a fair compromise. It doesn't hurt businesses, you know, too much from their bottom line. It doesn't hurt them too much, and then you know you start seeing certain families be lifted out of the poverty level, and that's ultimately that should be the goal.
Great. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for our next ASU Democrats versus Republicans debate. This is Nihal Krishan signing off from the Cronkite School.